So I guess we talked before we were recording, and what drew me to you. I was looking around for cool people because I want to talk to awesome people, and I saw you like to speak about men and emotions and how men always have to be this, the stereotypical tough guy and they can't let their emotions out. And I'm like, wow, that's me. Like you have to
Yeah.
keep all these emotions inside. You're running a business. You kind of express how you're feeling. You keep it all inside, and then all this stress and anxiety builds up, and there you are. How did you really start talking about that and realize that that's a major issue for everybody?
Yeah, well, like I said, so the sort of I studied the impact that emotion has on human behavior to become a better salesman, to become a better business leader. And it was probably, I don't know, 7 years ago. I was out for coffee with a lady friend of mine, and we were chatting about these things. And I'd said something at one point about, all this talk about us manning up. And I said, really, it should be more about men need to learn to woman up. And so I actually wrote a piece on that about 7 years ago, entitled "Men, It's Time to Woman Up." And flash forward, a couple years later, um, my my girlfriend, in 2015, uh, ended up getting murdered by an ex-boyfriend of hers, which kind of really just tied this home. Here was a guy that made a decision with very permanent consequences based on a very temporary emotion. Um, so everything I'd studied about how emotion impacts the decisions we make in everyday life kind of came full circle at that moment. And I realized, at that time, that I had an opportunity to turn this pain into purpose. And originally, when it happened, I had a lot of people that wanted me to go after the justice system that surely failed her. She'd done all the right things, filed all the right paperwork, had the right restraining order. I mean, this guy was a bad apple. And, there's no amount of court orders that are going to protect you from somebody like that. So, I had a lot of people that wanted me to sort of go after the justice system, which, surely there's a lot of room for improvement there. But when I looked at that, I mean, we're talking about putting a band-aid on a ruptured jugular. Um, and I started looking at how do we prevent men like this from existing in the first place? You know, Obviously there was something deep-seated within him that caused this behavior. Um, so I started looking at, how do we prevent men like this from existing in the first place? And to me, it really does come back to that, what I call emotional reconnection practice. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is, emotionally connected men don't fucking kill people, period. And, we touched on it earlier. As guys, we're actively discouraged from exploring our emotions, for fear of, being called a pussy, or, we see it all the time. And I know there's a lot of talk these days, but finding real and meaningful ways to be able to practice this um, is still challenging. We still feel this, if you're a husband and a father, you probably feel this weight of, I got to be the provider. Whether or not your partner expects that or not, there's just this ingrained societal feeling of, I got to be the man. I got to step up. I got to provide. And I can't complain about it. I got to just suck it up. And this goes on and on and on, and it can easily spiral. I mean, look at the rates of loneliness, depression, and suicide in men, and it's ridiculous. It's an epidemic. So, you know, for me, this encompasses so much more. Obviously, from a violence prevention standpoint, gender-based violence or intimate partner violence, I've become very involved in that prevention community. And to me, this is the answer. And not only is this the answer for that realm, but again, when we talk about suicide, depression, violence in general, um, men are acting out for a reason. Um, the sexual assaults, the Me Too movements, and again, I know this can be a polarizing topic, but the reality is, if we can find ways as guys to practice that emotional reconnection, it just makes us so much better as human beings, makes us better fathers, better partners, better employees, better leaders, all these things. Like, again, there's a plethora of evidence that talks about the importance of, emotional intelligence. Um, Yet as guys, it's difficult for us to become emotionally intelligent when we're not allowed to explore that.